Well, good morning. November the 11th, 2020. For years we've gathered together, usually as a group in a community in our large open space downstairs, but today, unfortunately, in light of 2020 and COVID, we are kind of limited to where we can share together, but we do want to spend time today and celebrate and honor those men and women who shared their lives so that we may experience the freedom that we so often take for granted. We think back, of course, to the two world wars, but we know there have been many, many others who've given their lives, who've lost family members, and who are actually with us today, and so we want to honor them. And although it's a little bit different this year, to say that we're in a unique situation would be the understatement of our year, but we can still take time today to remember those, to keep them in our thoughts, and yes, even in our prayers. At 11 o'clock, we're going to pause and we're going to invite you to have 2 minutes of silence, whether you're out walking about or whether you're in your room, to remember those who we love and we care for, and especially those in our Tansley community. I came across an article that I wanted to read for you today, and we often wear the poppy, and of course we remember those by wearing it. We of course think of them today. But I was given this story, an article written some years ago. On November the 7th, 1920, in the secretest of secrecy, 4 unidentified British bodies were exhumed from their temporary battlefield cemeteries in France. None of the soldiers who were digging were told why. The bodies were taken by field ambulance to the GHQ, and once there, the bodies were draped with the Union flag. Sentries then were posted with Brigadier General Wyatt and Colonel Gell, selected one body at random. The other 3 were reburied. And a French honor guard was selected and stood by the coffin overnight of the chosen soldier. On the morning of November the 8th, a specifically designed coffin was made of oak from the grounds of Hampton Court, arrived, and the unknown soldier, the unknown warrior, was placed inside. On top was placed a crusader's sword and a shield on which was subscribed, "A British warrior who fell in the Great War, 1914 to 1918, for king and for country." On the 9th of November, the unknown soldier was taken by horse-drawn carriage through the guards of honor and the sound of tolling bells and the bugle call to the Query side. There he was saluted by a march and loaded into the HMS Vernon, bound for Dover. The coffin stood on the deck covered in wreaths, surrounded by the French honor guard. And upon arrival at Dover, the unknown soldier was met with a 19-gun salute, something that was normally only reserved for a field marshal. A special train had been arranged, and he was then convened into Victoria Station, London. He remained there overnight, and on the morning of November the 11th, he was taken into Westminster Abbey. The idea of the unknown warrior was a padre called David Ralton, who had served on the front line during the Great War, and the Union flag he had used at the altar cloth whilst at the front was the one that had been draped over the coffin. It was in his intention that all the relatives of 773 combatants whose bodies had not been identified could believe that the unknown warrior, the unknown soldier, could very well be their lost husband, father, brother, or son. This is the reason why we wear poppies. We do not glorify war. We remember with humility the great and the ultimate sacrifices that were made, not just in this war, but in every war and conflict that our service personnel have fought to ensure the liberties and the freedoms that we now take for granted. Every year on the 11th of November, we remember the unknown warrior. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. Today, if you are one of those soldiers who served, or one of those family members who lost a loved one, we remember you, and we invite you to honor them today as you think and remember. Thanks for sharing with us. We hope you enjoy this time together, and as I said, at 11 o'clock, we're going to pause and invite you to take 2 moments of silence. Thanks again.
My name is Tom Gingrich. I was a navigator by trade in the Air Force. I was very fortunate. I was able to travel the world during my period. I, I logged over 10,000 hours. Pretty well, as I say, traveling the world, and I can honestly say it was the 25 best years of my life. I joined the Air Force when I was 20, and I flew continuously until age 45. 25 years total, and enjoyed every minute of it. I guess the best memories I have were the crew members I had. I was very fortunate. I was never had to worry about the proficiency of my crew members because we were all top notch. And it was a good life. Well, I started off on Lancasters. We actually photographed the North. The photographs we took they used to map the Arctic. We were one of the first countries that was able to map their own country. And we flew, of all things, Lancasters, anywhere from 3,000 feet up to 30,000 feet. The Lanc was a good aircraft. You could always rely on it. I tell you, it was really an honor to fly with the crews we did. And very fortunately, there was, I guess, the only real accident that kind of got to me was when an aircraft went down in the Caribbean. They were low level. It was a maritime squadron, and they dipped the wing, and it hit the water, and it just cartwheeled, and all 13 crew members were killed. They were crew members that I had, like they were from Maritime Command, but a lot of the Transport Command people transferred back to Maritime, and a lot of them were buddies that I flew with. The military is a good life. It's a real good life. That's if you're made for it, because the one thing they do is they look after you. And also the buddy system that we developed was something I'll always remember. And you can look forward to it.
I'm Robert Krauss, and I was a member of the Army for 33 years. And I started out in Korea, in the Korean War, and that's why I'm a veteran on that. I actually joined in college and worked up from that, went to Korea in '52, and from then on I stayed in Canada for a while. Then I went to the Middle East, or to Gaza Strip, if you remember that, and spent a year there looking after UNICEF. From then on I traveled from across Canada, various Army bases, looking after their structural things, and ended up in Ottawa as looking after the bases pretty on the engineering side from right across Canada, so, and including Alert, which people don't know that the Army's there most of the time on that. I learned, and I still remember this very clearly, what a bullet sounds like when it misses you. And it was a war, it wasn't a type of thing. So that was one of my best experiences. I spent time in Whitehorse in the Yukon as the bridge engineer for the Alaska Highway, and that was interesting. I think we should think about the sacrifices and not celebrate them, but remember them. And wear a poppy. What do Canadians fight for? They fight for freedom, to protect their property, which is, i.e. Canada, stuff like that. And they fight for joining with other people doing the same thing.
My name is Ted Mills. I was a flight sergeant in the Air Force. World War II, I ended up flying with the Royal Air Force. We flew Lancasters over Germany. I was born and raised in Uxbridge, or just east of Uxbridge on a farm. We don't want another war. Remember your veterans.
My name is Albert Hood, and I was in the Air Force 5 years. I was a wireless operator air gunner, and my rank when I came out was warrant officer first class. Well, we were taking supplies to the French and the underground Maquis mostly, and we also took paratroopers. You heard of Arnhem? I made 4 trips to Arnhem in that week that they were there. The paratroopers, we took them in gliders at Arnhem. Mm-hmm. There were other guys take paratroopers, guys jumping from the plane, but ours were in gliders. So we towed a glider over to the center of town and cut it loose, and they went down and landed. I was in the Army for 1 year and in the Air Force for 4 years. So it's 5 years altogether.
Was it common for people to make that transition?
No. I joined the Army when I was 17. And the regiment I was with, I joined a tank corps in the Army. And I told them I was 19. Of course, you had to get in. But then a year later, they went overseas. I was ready to go overseas, and they found out my age. So you had to be 19 to go overseas. So they sent me off to the training center and said, stay there until you're 19 and then come back and join the regiment. And while I was in this training center, I applied to the Air Force because you could get in there at 18. And I got transferred into the Air Force. And I spent 4 years in there.
Well, my name is Ray Bernier, and I retired as a major after 16 years of active duties. I went first to the Royal Military College, then I joined the Royal Armored Corps, tanks, and my regiment was the 4th Garrett Horse from Winnipeg. We were stationed in Petawawa, newly formed regiment. And I went to Germany with them, and then I was sent on exchange with the British Army, the 4th 7th Royal Dragoon Guards. And I spent 2 years in the British Army. Then came back to the 4th Garrett Horse, and we came back to Canada, really. I'm also an honorary member of the U.S. 82nd Airborne Division. And I attended the Command and Staff College. As I mentioned to you, I spent 16 years on full active duties in the regular forces. That's it. With the British Army, I was acting second in command of a squadron of the armored regiment there. And if I recall now, I know we were doing some recce all over the place really, and we did a big recce from Münster, Grenoble, where we were located, to the southern part of France. It took about a week really it was quite an experience by itself really. That's about, I would say, the rest. Oh, the October crisis, yes, I was there. I was patrolling the streets of Montreal at the time. At the time, I had been transferred to the 12 RBC, to what they call another armored regiment, newly formed in Valcartier. And I guess probably because I was speaking French, they transferred me from the Fort Garry-Ross into the 12 RBC, 12, the 12e Régiment Blindé du Canada. So that's about it, really.
My name is Bob Whimpers. I started off in the military when I went to university. At that time, they had a company of Navy, Air Force, and Army. And I joined the Air Force branch. And I was one of the last 5 selected for aircrew. I wanted to be a pilot. And within a week of going to Trenton for training, they cut it down to 2 and I didn't quite make the cut. That was my biggest military disappointment in life. I wanted to be a pilot. But I continued with the Air Force in the maintenance end. And although I was what they call in the Royal Canadian Electrical and Mechanical Engineers, in other words, the maintenance department of the Army, I was with a service battalion. That's where they had them. And but I wasn't there very long, and the general called me up for the whole area and called me, and he said, I'm having trouble with the signals unit in Hamilton. I want you to take that over. I was a little reluctant, but you don't say no to the general. So I took over the signals unit and really didn't know much about it. I was really better with wrenches and wreckers and stuff like that. But it was quite a satisfying tour that I had there. And then I went back to the service battalion and eventually became the CO of it. And then subsequent to my active reserve service in those units, I became honorary colonel of the signals unit, and subsequently again honorary colonel of the service battalion, which is a position of great honor. Although you're on the staff, but you're not on the payroll. That's the difference. And I had several years of that, and but when I was through there, I thought, in being in the reserves, I never had experience of overseas or any danger place. So an opportunity came up to serve with the Israeli army. I spent a couple of months with the Israeli army, and it was very interesting. It was at a base just south of the Gaza Strip, about 10 kilometers from it. And it was basically a maintenance base, and that's what I did, was maintenance work there. But not in the rank of colonel. I was just an Israeli soldier. And but it was very interesting because they were very serious about things there. They armed patrols of the perimeter all the time, and at the front gate there was 2 machine gun nests, and also the spikes that would come up if somebody wanted to drive through to get the tires. So it was good. They were very serious. In Canada, it was so relaxed compared to all that, any basis I was at. And that was it. I just felt I had to go someplace that was slightly dangerous, and they took it very seriously, because Israel has been at war basically since they started. Well, we'll put it this way, the mere fact, because I had to wear the uniform out in public at times, and just because you had a uniform, you never know who's going to shoot you.
Yeah.
You got to remember our fallen dead there. In the Spectator there was quite a little thing about the casualties, particularly in World War One. And World War II, there was many casualties too, but World War One was basically a slaughterhouse in the trenches, and the conditions, over the top and all that. And you know what those guys went through was quite disturbing when you read about it. But I never had really a tough time. Mm-hmm. And the reserves in Canada, for instance, they're available for local disasters, snowstorms, flooding and all that. And they're called out occasionally for that. But they never have anything, and searches for lost kids and stuff. I participated in a few of them, but never nothing very dangerous personally. But the reserves are good, and the thing at the university, for instance, it was basically was to provide officers, trained officers for the reserves. Although you didn't automatically go in the regular force, you had to apply, and a lot of them, depending on the record they had in the summers, could get in the regular force. But after the war, it was a couple of years after the war, they didn't want to be caught short, and they wanted the reserves to be strong, and they wanted to have, and those who didn't join the reserves were on a supplementary reserve list. In case there was an emergency, they could pull these guys out.
Mm-hmm. My name is Naren McQueen. I'm a retired Lieutenant Commander, Royal Canadian Navy Reserve. I spent the last 24 years of my military career in charge of Sea Cadets in Ontario. First as commanding officer of a corps that needed to be rebuilt, and then I established a new corps in Brampton and a new corps in Oakville. And then I was on an advisory council in Ottawa for 5 years, providing guidance to the Department of National Defence on issues affecting cadet corps in Ontario. Well, I spent my first year of the military at Royal Military College in Kingston. After I finished high school, I couldn't afford to go to university any other way, so I joined the Army and let the Army educate me for 1 year, at which time I left, which we could do at the time. And I worked my way through McMaster Chemical Engineering degree. And at the end of my third year, on December the 7th, 1971, which was the 30th anniversary of Pearl Harbor, I received my Queen's Commission in the Canadian Armed Forces. And that was a high day. I'm a veteran of a different sort. I grew up thinking of veterans as people who had served in one of the 2 world wars or in Korea. These days, if you put in 12 years of service into the forces, you're considered a veteran. That's the kind of veteran I am. I've got 25 years of service. But I still feel that we owe a debt of gratitude to the true veterans, the ones who fought the wars for us. So the message I'd like to get through to all of the residents here is to pay their respects to the memory of the people who actually fought the wars on our behalf and gave us the freedoms that we've got today. We are fortunate in that we have freedom of choice in this country. We can vote for whom we wish to vote. Nobody tells us what we can and cannot do politically. We've got tremendous freedoms, but those freedoms come at a price. You have to buy those freedoms, and sometimes you buy them with blood. There were, in the Second World War, had we not fought, we would probably all be speaking German today and have no rights at all. So that's really what people were fighting for, was the right to continue to be a free world.